So the warmest of welcome to our Wastewater Management meeting today. Penny, would it be all right if
Thanks, Ria. I te atua whakatūwhera te au mai e koe. Kia mātua ki nei hui nā huari o te tika o te ora o te tō o te maramatana ki ai mātua e koe. E whakamoiuti, e whakakōria ki te ingoa tāpura.
Many. Thank you for that. And I do apologise that that I'm the chair today. I'm not 100% sure how I got here, but we are going to resolve that in the next minute. Whereas in the past, and I hope I haven't discussed it with the two of you over here, but our intention is to have co-chairs, where we have one councillor and then one of our tangata whenua reps, and they take turns to chair these meetings. So if it is all right with everyone, do I have an apologies for today's meeting? Pretty sure.
Yeah, he was coming this morning, but I took it.
Am I missing a councillor? Tony. Oh yeah, he's an apology as well. Okay. Someone willing to move the apology? Thank you, Larry. A seconder. Thank you, Nick. All in favour? 1-3 carried. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is propose people nominate themselves or nominate someone else for council position. Let's go for council stuff first.
I'll nominate Bip.
I was going to suggest, Larry, since you've been here the longest, Larry, and have the deepest background. He said, I'm new to this kaupapa, so I would appreciate the guidance that you're able to provide.
Rhonda, do you have an opinion? Larry said Nick, but then Nick said Larry has got more experience and maybe he should fill that position.
Absolutely, experience is great.
So you're happy with...
I am, because both Nick and I are 12 months old. And we'd like to be modelled in great practice. Thank you.
Are you happy?
I am happy.
With that?
And certainly, of course, Larry is part of the co-chair.
Ronald, are you happy to be the co-chair? I do apologise for my loose process. I don't usually run loose processes like this, but I want us to get to the mahi. So thank you, Larry. Thank you, Ronald. Now we're going to do a coin toss to see who's going to come and take the hot chair here from me. So thank you for that. I'm going to hand you over to your two new co-chairs, Ronald and Larry. Thank you very much, and I am going to catch a flight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time to get set up.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Wastewater Management Committee for November.
Yeah, through the chair, just to kind of recap where we've been, I will just provide a high level if that's okay, if now's the right time, or so. Just in terms of where we've been, I think we've previously, so you haven't got minutes from the last meetings because we haven't had a quorum for some time. So this hui is really about catching up and on what we've been doing in terms of wastewater treatment stage 2 upgrade. I'm not sure if everyone's had an opportunity to go on site and have a look around and, at the new kit that's currently we're still in commissioning. There's going to be an opening.
This report is still in commission.
So it'll be good if you haven't had an opportunity. We're trying to get you on site to have a look around at the kit. So really today is an opportunity to be introduced to Leo and the mahi that they've been doing to date. Tim's kind of very first committee meeting, so I'm here to help support until he's got his feet really rounded. So kia ora tātou.
Right, we've got no declarations of interest. We've gone through the apologies. And
So just on declarations of interest, I'm not sure exactly where the eyes, but because we have tangata whenua representatives here, I have an affiliation with those tangata whenua groups.
oh, yes.
Just indicating that. But I've got my council hat on.
I think that's no, thank you for that, mate.
Mr. Chair, that's not necessarily a conflict of interest in the terms of the definitions we use.
No, I don't think.
But in terms of acknowledging mana whenua interest, I equally, as
Yes, for sure.
as they have mana whenua interest. Kia ora.
Okay, no, it's been. We've got no leaves of absence, no acknowledgements and tributes. Don't have any public
Sorry,
input.
Larry. I just want to acknowledge the previous councillors on this committee.
Sure.
Jerry is our previous chair. Shannon and Kerry.
And Kerry, yeah, Kerry, that's right too, yes.
Just note
Yeah,
my
very much,
appreciation for their service.
Yeah, your input was invaluable over those times. Fantastic. Public input and petitions. No extraordinary business, notice of motion, or adjourned business. So we'll go straight to page number 4, the wastewater treatment stage update.
Sorry, before we do, there might be a quick one for Unity. So I note that we've gone from 4 meetings to 2 meetings a year now.
Yes, so through the chair, there will be 4 meetings next year. It's just we couldn't get
For this year,
for this year, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there's page 4. And come.
Yeah, I will,
Oh, Leo, sorry. Leo's read this paper. Manager.
So a critical part of this this particular report is it's from July 1st to June end. So July 1st 22 to June end 23. So it's catching up on the full 12 months since the last meeting. So that's how this report has been staged, even though the update on stage 2 was September, because he tried to keep it current. At that point, we'd achieved practical completion of the Dell work, and they were the instructors of the stage 2 development at the wastewater treatment plant. And maybe a bit of background on the stage 2 treatment. It was the addition, so stage 1 was the BTF, the screens, the grit filters, the BTF, or biotrickle filter plant, and stage 2 is taking that wastewater, or treated wastewater, and taking it through a clarifier stage, it's called a lamella, which removes solids and allows the free-flowing liquid to then travel through a set of tertiary filters, which filters it down to certain micron rating that then gives good effect to UV treatment or disinfection. So, and the clarifier, the solids that are removed are collected, and they go through a process that converts them into about 17% solids, which then goes to taken off site, so they're completely removed from the process. So what is leaving the plant through the wastewater pipe has been treated to a disaffected level that meets the consent requirements. So that was the intent of stage 2, so the stuff that's coming out, and I think we might have seen it with the wastewater pipe repair that what should be coming out of the after stage 2 is a nice, pretty clear liquid water. So at this point, the contractors had finished the construction with the civil works, and we were in hot commissioning, which was testing the equipment under pressure as the product going through. So we've done cold commissioning, which is just water running through the system, making sure everything works, and hot commissioning, taking it through with actual wastewater product flowing through it. And that we were still in hot commissioning at the end of this report. It was in budget for this stage, which was really positive. And the only milestones we hadn't hit was around the commissioning and the trial operations, which required the plant to be operating through hot commissioning and then very much trial operations, which is the refinement to hit the performance targets of the equipment. So all in all, at this particular stage, to the end of in this report, it was progressing exceptionally well, on target with budget. Equipment was looking good, and hot commissioning was going okay, but there were some issues of just understanding the equipment and refining it. And so through the report, Ben MacArthur, who's the project lead, was given a description as to just how that's going over the previous report. What's achieved. From this end, do we want to go into the finer details of what's in each one? So health and safety side of things, on down through the completion, handed it back over to the wastewater treatment plant operators or council. We went issues through the course of it that have been reported. So it went well. General update. Following the successful completion of cold commissioning, a blessing was held on site at the end of July, so hot commissioning could start from the 31st. Good attendance for the blessing. We had all the contractors there and representatives from council. It also offered us an amazing opportunity to unveil a plaque for Evan West, who was a critical part of that project. And a plaque was put in place to just commend the work we did and thank Neville for his service with council, his pending retirement beginning in September. So the civil works items were finished. The hardscaping was completed. The landscaping is still pending. It's underway at the moment. So there, just in regards to that hot commissioning, as I talked about, following that, the hot commissioning is when they would have handed it over to council. There were still a few issues that we were working through with Becca and with McConnell Dow, but nothing that hindered giving practical completion to the project from a construction perspective. The issues really related to the performance of the tertiary filters that we had during hot commissioning. They were blocking up. They required substantial amounts of backwashing to try and maintain performance. However, in simple summary, a lot of product was not making it through the tertiary filters and had to be bypassed, going straight to the UV. And there's been quite an intensive process over the last several weeks with the suppliers of the tertiary filters to understand them and get them up to performance levels. At the moment, they're working, and they're working well, which is really going to be next week's update. But until we could get all of the principal pieces of equipment, which is the stuff that council actually purchased, which is the clarifier, the tertiary filters, the UVs, and the solids production equipment, we couldn't actually sign off that we could move away from hot commissioning. So it's kind of looking back a few months, obviously, on this one, but at that point, we're still refining where we were sitting with the tertiary filters. Clarifier was working well. It was within specification in regards to the product that it was delivering to the tertiary filters. Tertiary filters just require understanding of how they actually perform and what operational practice had to be put in place to find them. A few issues with the UV around sensors in them and how they operated. So they caused some issues as well. But basically, I suppose a good example of how well the plant was performing was during the emergency repair to the pipeline. The product that we were actually here was of exceptional quality and within specification that we were targeting. And I think it aided that it just looked like water that was coming out the end during that process. So a nice little indication that this, I think, the stage 2 is outcomes for what we're aiming for. So he's rolled through what the construction process was, which is MCC room fit out, associated plan, shutdowns, cutting works, visits to sites from Becca, just the design engineers, so just making sure that they assisted us in helping refine the performance of the plant. They've been involved for the last few weeks. Testing equipment on site, because of part of hot commissioning going into trial commissioning is quite an intensive sampling and testing process to ensure that each piece of equipment is performing as it should, and we're on track to achieving the target of the whole plant. We had the blessing of the site prior to hot commissioning, demobilisation from site, so Connell Dowell. We're very happy to get practical completion and be able to move on off-site to the next project, which then cleaned up the site, enabled us to do works on on just refreshing it all and having it look presentable. Fencing reinstatement is still pending. We've selected providers for that through tenders, and that'll be taking action in a couple of weeks. The stockpile material remains on site, so it's actually in quite a substantial bun around the front section of the plant through restrictions about where that product could actually go. So pending discussing the next one, it's all going to be fully planted in the bun to lock in the material. Stuff grows in it quite well from what we can see because there's weeds modeled on it. So that planting is going to be completed very soon. So hopefully we're going to end up with something that looks good as you're driving in, visually appealing. Quality documentation's now been submitted, so that's sitting with the project manager in regards to the work from Dowell. The operator training session, they were quite intensive through August, September and into October. So right now what we're doing with the team is just refining what their daily practices and what it are to maximise the performance of that equipment. And yeah, he's basically going through, there's been a fair bit of work done by Ben going through variations that have been applied by contractors and making sure they're fair and reasonable, which kind of falls into that at this point of this report we're on track for budget. We managed to cut out substantial amounts of applications for variations, about 80k, that through just working through what was actually in the contract and what they were applying for, that it wasn't correct. Pavement's been sealed around the site, so the road's been reinstated, very presentable. The line marking's been done, which is mainly around the spiral containers, which is what the solids get dropped into, and then operator comes and takes them off site for composting. And that nice little comment on the end of the construction process, which is out for operation, which was completed in early October. To sort of say, maybe to put into perspective with regard to this hot commissioning process and impact of stage 2, is that the damaged outfall pipe had a major impact on the wastewater treatment plant because there was reduced flows. So the maximum flows that the pipeline could cope with in its damaged state was 360 litres a second. The plant's designed to operate at 450 litres a second, and when we get rain, which we have had a fair bit of, as we all know, in the last few months, that can go as high as 1,200 litres a second if it's a massive event. So there was a lot of pressure on the team trying to manage that, which actually did action what we'll talk about later on, which is wet weather overflows as well. So that outfall pipe was a major contributing factor to the performance of the stage 2 side of things and the restrictions on it, and just our performance overall. Since the pipe's been reinstated, the weight that was lifted off the team's shoulders and it's just been able to operate like normal, run the plant like normal was massive. So a lot of it had to be operated in manual mode with restricting pumps, etc. So we ensure that we were compliant and negatively impacting on the environment. So going forward for this report, which is kind of in the next bracket, was the boundary fence, which is still pending. The close out of the bulk electrical variations, which is just about completing the hot commissioning, working through the defects, which we still are, and then handing over to the GDC wastewater treatment plant operators fully, so project closed, and an official opening ceremony, which was planned for the 31st, but we weren't ready, so we're putting it into the new year, pending everyone's acceptance of what's realistic there. Milestones, cold commissioning completed, fantastic hot commissioning. We'd targeted for August, September. It did push into October and into November, but we have officially completed hot commissioning now and practical completion granted to Karakia on the 7th of September. Trial period, operating period forecast to start in September, but we haven't started yet, which was his report, and he's got a tracking of the monthly tracking as to how we're tracking against budget, which between the two just shows that through this report we're on target and actually sitting under projected at the end of the project. Lovely little some pictures there of Neville's plant, and pretty much just illustrating that the work has been completed and it's looking pretty good. The road's been completed, which is not shown in picture 2 now. Picture showing the clarifier is full with water at that point, potable water. Screw press is ready. You can see so that's we're looking on page 11, that's the solids production equipment, which is basically a screw press, which the product comes in the bottom and is gradually screwed, and the solids come out the top, and the liquid goes into a storage tank and goes back through the system. Sludge pumps, which are moving the solid sludge into for processing. It's just general sort of pictures, and an overall picture of the site looking nice and tidy. Showing the bund, which has since been covered, what's there in Hessian, ready for planting. Bit of picture of some solids overrun while they were working through this refining the system. That's kind of what's coming out from a solids perspective once the bottom's been added to it. And the spiral containers are what that is transferred into and then taken off site for through the processing, road paving completed, which is pretty much Ben's report.
Fantastic, yeah, thank you so much, Gary. When's officially going to be open?
So at the moment, the next report will sort of say that we've finished the crop conditioning. We're just yet to start the trial operations because the BTF is not quite at its optimum performance at the moment. So with all of the rain that we've had, copious amounts have gone through, it's really affected the biological growth in there. And we kind of want to get that closer to where it should be, because then we're going to get true performance of solids and how that looks. So we'll move into trial operations in December. There's 100 days of trial operations. So 100 days. So we're looking at 3 months for that, essentially. So we can still open during trial operations. Just making sure that really what I was aiming for the team, or I had promoted to the directors, is I want the team to be confident that they're 100% with it, that it is performing exactly how it should, so that when we are opening it, we know that we're confidence is exceptionally high, and we know we're in that happy spot where we'll continue. Now it is performing and it is working, but it's just having the team that we know that the boxes. So that's what was there until the meeting. Because if we'd opened this year, we was with all of the weather impacts and everything that kind of flows through there, things were just quite there. You know, the tertiary filter we hadn't sorted out, the UV we hadn't sorted out, which we now have, and now it's just refinement of the process.
One question I've got is when it comes to the bugs, we've had like a big weather event like we had on the weekend, and we had to open the scours again. What's the timing between the capacity of the water and when you have to open the scours, and bearing in mind how long it takes for the bugs to reinstate as well? Do you have to open the scours up sooner to try and protect those bugs, or have you factored all that? Sure.
No, really.
The scours are open really to solve a network issue, quite separate from the treatment plant issue. The bugs or bacteria in this case are attached to the media within the biological trickling filters. So as your water runs through the lattice there, they come in contact with the sessile bacteria, so it's attached to solid items. Now they take a while to grow, but when you get a weak solutions running through, which happens during storm, which is unavoidable, you have less food for the biology there. So it over time, and we had extended time of high water level here, it adjusts to having less food, so that all those bugs skinny up. They all get very trim, and it takes time to build them back again. That's sped up with the sort of nutrients they get. So if you come back to normal wastewater, which we're not quite at yet, because we've still got such high groundwater levels, that'll happen faster. Normally you'd expect it to be up to speed in a few short weeks. Might take a bit longer in our case. The same technology is used around the coast of New Zealand, so there's a little bit of knowledge here, but we do have to be patient with these bugs. They want nutrients, and in these conditions we have at present, they have not quite enough to get up to speed. So dry weather would be nice, would help us.
Okay. So the scours is totally a network issue, nothing to do with the capacity of the plant.
It's a volume issue in the network to stop overflows. It could be a relationship to the plant. I'm not familiar enough with it yet.
The plant's maximum is 850 litres a second, and obviously it can process 450, but that pipe can handle 850. So that is a trigger point as well. So if it's topping over there, but as Tim said, it's also network if there's certain parts of the network
Coming up from the
manholes and the like, and they'll have to open scours at that point, which is what we saw on the weekend.
Is there any questions for Councillor Tibble.
Given that you just, thank you very much for the explanation in relation to the bugs. That's really helpful. My question is, if the problem with the scales is network-based because it's overloaded, the comparison between it coming through the waste management system and gone through bugs and out, and those solids versus what gets then through the scales put out, we're still not being able to stop our problem of affecting our waterways?
Correct, you'll be putting out raw sewage essentially, but it's very diluted in those cases as well. It's also that in a storm event, it's usual practice in every municipality I've ever dealt with, in every country I've worked in high level events like that. You want to be able to handle normal rain conditions, but the only way out of that challenge is to engineer your way out from the bottom up, which would mean a total replacement of everything to try and eliminate that. In fact, no one's achieving that at all anywhere, despite what they say.
Thank you. It's just a supplementary then. What is the standard acceptable coming through that space when the scours are open, given that the technology worldwide is following exactly the methodology you've just explained? When would it become a point where it would be unacceptable for us to be, like I know we use 3 days or something where we can't go swimming, but what I'm not understanding in relation to that is how that affects the biodiversity of our waterways, and I'm wondering what that means in terms of that environmental degradation of our waterways and the species that are in those waterways when we do that.
Well, normally when this occurs, it is, I'll point out, it's dilute, so that the impact from other sources are likely to be greater. An example I could give would be if you're in a flood zone, spilling out of a dairy farm, for instance, will exceed the biological load of an entire city's waste overflow. The more dangerous nature of our overflows is related to humans, so it can affect us more so than other sorts of wastewater. But to your question, it happens. It's dilute, and it's with a whole lot of other pollutants which are also coming in from all surface sources as well. And we're still treating at those stages at as much as the plant can treat as well. So that's the other thing to point out.
Thank you. May I have a supplementary? Just this is my final one. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for that information, because it's the first time I've been able to ask it, to be able to be thinking this way about it. Have I understood this correctly then, that our wastewater management treatment plant will take care to the best of its ability for what happens in our urban system and that water flow, but it has no direct capacity, so it's a 1 point only for the urban population, but if upstream other things are happening, it has no ability to mitigate that other than through resource management consent?
Correct. A landslide is a pollution by the metrics, because it'll add suspended solids to the river, which is something we measure outside of our plant. And to your earlier question, which I didn't answer, we're governed on what's acceptable and what isn't by what resource consents say, and that's usually an annualised exceedance allowance. I'm not aware what ours are at this point. I will be shortly.
Thank you very much.
Just following up on that one, Chair, so we've got outside those required limits of that consent. That consent doesn't lie in this room. Consent is answerable in places. So yeah, how train-wise is shifted across into WMC. I guess I'm just worried that somebody should be watching those consents. It was based on so many rain events, and council can't help that we've exceeded the number of rain events that they have applied for. But the the other important one is that there is no other bypass in our system that we're in charge of. So there's no bypass at the plant if there's too much water going into the...
There is overflow at the plant, so the plant is designed that the system will put up to 500 litres through the system. Above that, there is a weir basically that if that rainfall or that flow is so intense that will bypass and go out the outfall. But it's in weather events is the issue, and as you point out, we've had so many this year. I should sort of say that this environment's obviously had a positive effect in regards to the team used to overflow or look at the scales and the overflows, and they'll always aim for overflows more than scales if they can, because at least it's just overflowing the tournament. But we're overflowing at 60 mil of rain. They've got it to 120 mil, 100% increase in capacity by managing the system and the positive work they've done with pipeline renewals and checks around properties and whatnot too. So it has been quite a substantial improvement. So the last year has not been hopefully not a typical year. So the scale of the weather events is really pushing the boundaries of what we can all cope with, I think.
I think it's fair to say that overflow that Leo is referring to is the preferred overflow than the scales.
Yeah.
Because that at least, correct me if I'm wrong, goes out the final effluent pipe.
It does.
So that at least goes to the next treatment level, most basic one, which is getting the wastewater away from Whenua into where the scour valves are opened. Yeah, but it's also the risk if you don't open the scour valves, you have overflows within the city where the people are. So that's a real driver here. Yeah.
So the bypass at the plant, is it 70% treated, or is it?
No, it won't be, because it bypasses. So that's on the incoming flow from the city. At that point, the weir's at that point. So but it will be dilute.
It'll be this identical to what is done at the scours.
Yes.
Only the point it happens is a better location for our people here. Out the outfall pipe.
So possibly a higher dilution than straight out of the scales?
No, it'll be the same. Yeah. As I say, we've got scours and we've got overflows in the system, so the team will try and use the overflows as much as they can rather than the straight scours. Problem is Wainui Road is a scour, and that's the one that's really impeded. But in other areas, though, like in the last one, they've tried to go for the overflows, which is really driven by the flood flows, really. Stormwater flows. That's our preferred. So we try and limit the impact as best as we can.
Yes, Councillor Tibble's one is about what goes into the river and its effect. It would seem that at the plant we're able to measure what is actually going directly and what might be in that as well.
For stuff passing through the plant, definitely. At the inlet side, not sampling at that point. We do sample randomly at that through the testing process, but it's not automatically tracked through sensors.
Typically we are sampling our normal pipeline though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just lead on to that. If because right now we're saying that we can determine how our infrastructure is coping with these big events because of the time that the scours are being opened, and so if the scours are not opened as quick, then we think that our infrastructure is slowly improving in the backyards. But the other side, we're letting it out the outfall, so it's like a little bit of it's not really a defined way of describing it, really, isn't it? Because if we've got, it is kind of insignificant, because at the end of the day it's still going out into the ocean whether it's going out through the outfall pipe or through the river. So how do we know that our infrastructure is improving?
I think the metrics that Leo mentioned about the amount of flow before we're activating the scours was explain how that improvement has happened.
Oh, yeah.
So that's and I would say it's still preferential to be overflowing at the treatment plant bypass than opening the scours. And the type of pollutants going out there are very quickly assimilated in the marine environment, so you're safe in hours to short days. That's best case of a bad situation.
Chair, that's as you say, the safest case in a bad situation for tangata whenua still important. And I think that's why I like to see them separated. The scours is its own little argument, and you can have your backwards and forwards. I think the opportunity with the pipeline is that we can do some research and measure what we're doing against the events and work out some mitigation. We can do on site as opposed to in town here. It's just, we all know what the answers are. It's a big job to get around. But that's what I'm hoping, that there's mitigation we can do in the pipeline to lessen the amount of overflows that do go out that way.
I agree. I believe it's a long-term fix and strategic fix. Elimination, however, I don't think is possible, because these events are at such scale, and our other limitations to how much our people can afford is the other side of that challenge. But certainly over time, with good thinking, things are going to continue to improve. There's some improvements already, and by putting a mind to it, we can improve further.
You have questions for me?
I do have some wonderings around the dilution discussion. If there's any possible way of getting some idea around how much extra volume is released through the system into the river against how much the river is releasing itself. If we are releasing from Gladstone Road Bridge, it's meeting the emptying of the Waimata catchment that goes all the way back to Tauwharepara. And if we can get some scientific calculation on what those volumes are and and then we compare them, then we get a clear idea of what dilution might look like. So, and therefore how the environment itself carries a capacity to mitigate that impact. I don't know if that's possible, if there is some scientific way of, even if it's a ballpark figure on the volume released during heavy weather against the volume released by the Waimata, then mixes, dilutes, and then pushes it out to sea. And I get a feeling that those differences would be such under the same weather event that what is released in the river becomes quite minuscule in comparison. And then we get it's not that we're removing that impact, but we get an idea of how useful that dilution is. Yes. Because both contributions are affected by the same events.
The whenua basically pushes off all the stormwater that comes, uses its height, push off its stormwater, and the volumes are massive. It's in cubics. I don't think it's not that much of a challenge to give an idea of because the wastewater produced is relatively steady, so we can make that assumption. We just need to work out the cubics pumped out out of the river system and find the storm. That can be provided, I believe. idea of a theoretical overflow, normal flow of the river versus an actual of a storm event. We can work that one out.
I raise that too because out of cultural respect for the Waitata River and the importance that our awa play in, around taking care of the communities that choose to live alongside them. And that it's a often underestimated mechanism that we have available to us as a community. And those rivers have been playing their part for community for a lot while, but we tend to focus on a relative small amount that goes into the river against what the river can do itself without even us having to intervene there, but just allowing the river to be a river and help cleanse and restore the community.
It conveys enormous amounts out, and the actual treatment work would be in the ocean, in the Moa actually. It's out there very quickly from those scale points, a matter of minutes really. It's out into.
And it does highlight some of the discussions which I picked up in my time as council around phrases like te mana o te wai and te mana o te awa, and that we place these things as significant tools and a significant presence in our community. I do have another point to raise, Mr. Chairman, which hasn't been touched on, and it is the mortuary waste issue. What are some of the thoughts about separating that out from the treatment, collecting it, holding it?
That's the next paper, actually. Yeah, it's the next paper. Alternative use and disposal and water waste is Wisconsin mound is part of that.
I kind of raise it because the other mound, it seems to be apparent, is this 70% of solid that's retrieved from treatment, becoming compost. Where does that go? Where is it stored? Where is it kept? How is it kept? And what is the future plan for that?
Within, so that contract was given to Judd's.
Okay.
And obviously through that they have to meet their certain criteria for how they're processing that.
Okay.
It's got a certain pathway. It's not to obviously to maybe also to point out that solids has gone through an evolution process through the treatment as well. It's no longer what it started as. It's one of those bugs that has been converted into biosolids, I suppose, how you would actually class the terminology for it, but it's highly treated and it's been converted into a different form from its original solid point. So it goes through the composting process, which is a natural sterilizer as well. If you know about that, because compost itself, reaches 67, 70 degrees in its process of breaking down. I'm not 100% sure, I haven't read that one yet as to what the end use is, but it's not going into food production or anything. They had a specific pathway for it, given the substantial volumes that come off. So sorry, I haven't read that, but I can report back on that in the next meeting.
I think that would be useful for the community to understand what is the end life for some of this byproduct. Thank you.
I was just picking up on, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Council, would it be possible to make sure that in our next meeting we were able to have that information understood as to what is the end product and the way it feeds into the chain of sustainability overall?
Any more questions? Thanks for that. I look forward to seeing the wastewater treatment plant and going to its opening and seeing how it's operational. Water that comes out of it. It's very exciting. Big move from where we were.
I'll move the report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yeah. Moved by Wild and seconded by Councillor Tupara. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right. Carried. Right. we've got page 18, and it's alternative use and disposal. And for Wastewater Management Committee members that have been here for a while, this has been a long journey, and we've talked about alternative use and disposal for many, many a year. And we've gone down through a lot of scenarios. And most of the time was when water was really needed for irrigation or for whatever. And at this particular time, I think we've been inundated with so much water, but water is still gold, and we've got to cherish it. It's certainly one of the most important resources that we've got. And so if we can eventually get a really good use of this, it would be fantastic. But we've got Leo, you're going to talk to us report again?
This report, just to give it some understanding, was written in July 22. So it's obviously been worked through by previous management and was pending the meeting of the committee. But essentially, it's looking at what are the alternative pathways for our wastewater treated outflow from the wastewater plant. And Becca were commissioned to write a report and look at what alternative uses there could be. In this particular report, they focused on answering the irrigation question. Could it be used for irrigation within Whakapiti? And in the executive summary there, what they have said is the focus was to develop a stock take of potential irrigation users within an 8k radius of the plant, which is looking at ways of, I suppose, getting the treatment to, or the product to the end user. They've done some modelling of estimated potential irrigation water coming from the plant, and actually what is currently being used by the district for irrigation across various crops. You can see in there they've got that table that the typical water irrigation of crops was 2.2 million cube, and consented was 2.7 million cube, but actual irrigation use was only 148,000 cube, which of the wastewater treatment plant flows would represent 8% of the flows. Even if it was all of the crops and the consented water use, the flows from the plant would be capable of supplying 53%. And so 47% would still have to go somewhere. So there's a substantial amount produced from the plant. The plant shows that the modelled water demand of the crops that were irrigated only represents 43% of the flows. Their actual irrigation water use is only a minor fraction, 8% of the available volumes from the wastewater treatment plants. This indicates that 100% irrigation reuse of effluent would not be feasible when you're considering the crops in the study. A combined system where some of the water is used for irrigation and then is discharged to the ocean outfall or an alternative method would be possible. In order to explore the options for the irrigation use, water quality requirements of different crops were classified in accordance with Victorian guidelines of water recycling, which distinguishes three classes, A, B and C, based on biological requirements and pathogen reduction. Crops were matched by their most likely acceptable effluent class, and a pipeline route was outlined as a high-level option for reticulation system. The highest irrigation demand is in the summer. Obviously, a storage pond is likely to be required for supplementing in these months. A critical point, the mitigation of environmental risks such as nutrient loads is not covered in this report. This may impose more restrictive conditions. Where would I come from? I'd say that was a very sound comment. And impacted. To mitigate these risks, we do require further improvements to the treatment at the wastewater treatment plant to remove those levels of unacceptable nutrients or heavy metals. They have suggested as the next steps, looking at alternative use options like industrial reuse or aquifer recharge, which would be governed by this committee as to what we're looking at and look at getting reported. This one, as I say, solely sort of looked at use for crops and growing with that. And from what I read, it didn't really consider maybe what for the potential users of the irrigation, a key consideration would be the consumer as well, because it's too restrictive to what's accepted in regards to, and as we know that. Essentially, that was a multi-page report to basically sort of say that utilisation for irrigation was not would not work. It might be a combination of different options that have to be considered.
The reason for this, the outfall is always going to have to be plan B. But the quality of water going to the outfall to even improve other
Critical consideration in all this is the flow of wastewater is a constant, so it's always going to be available. Irrigation use is dependent on, right now, I was talking to a major grower, they haven't irrigated because they haven't needed to. So it's a major variable in regards to in a hot season, you might find people screaming out for it, but on the last couple of years that we've had, limited irrigation has been required. There's been some substantial developments in kiwi fruit and apples in Gisborne, but they haven't been the end user, so will be the acceptance around that as well.
It's interesting to read too that even with the takes that growers have got, they're not even using the capacity of the water takes that are so. Well, the question is 15 hectare saying of a water body to take a lot of the water as a backup. Has there been any site, any more, identify of possible sites for a lagoon or more?
It has been,
Comment.
I think, preliminary.
Chair, we have been entering into discussions around the site. That was parked for a stage. We're not sure what was going on with three waters, affordable waters. So once we've got some clarity on future direction, we'll pick that back up. Also, there was a change at the governance level as well as who the new chair was going to be. But we did have some discussions on that, progressive discussions there.
Because you'd think that there would be use for water parks or some big water body of some sort for all the different recreational users that we have around here. Bearing in mind that the quality of water is a pretty good standard. Anyway, it's food for the future.
Yeah, I think unfortunately with the infrequent nature of the meetings, you're right, we have seen this before, but this is at the end of a number of other projects, and we did discuss quite strongly about straight into the hour, and we discounted that and wetlands. There was just a clear body of water was too much hard work in a dedicated wasteland. We were looking for options that were more agreeable than a dedicated wasteland. But the Aquifer 1-2, I think with time that seems to grow stronger and stronger as well. Finding a 1 point entry, so to speak, and getting it in on a reasonable basis.
seems like a great resource to have. Well, it's certainly nice to have, know that we've got this as a good resource for the future and utilise it rather than just going into the ocean and wasted and into a part, into the other that we don't want to go. Any questions on?
We have some discussion there was summarising the report. I got a feeling that there is some sense of anxiety among food producers and their likely end users for their product around having or be it treated effluent returned to land into their crops. Has that been an issue?
I'm saying I'm just speaking from my past in regards to anything that affected, the product that you're selling is held in high regard, and when you think about the fruit that is exported, it has to be perfect. So anything that goes into that, they're fully measured from end to end, especially there's on the supply chain thing. So it could,
Yeah, I'm familiar with this subject for decades now, and the most advanced areas of the world that are good at this are pretty obvious. So that they're places that have a real premium for water. So Israel comes to mind, and Australia actually, really good in this space, but they do not use it for direct food production. And for the same reasons we wouldn't. The actual technology available can get that water totally absent of any pollutant whatsoever. That's not the reason at all. It's a perceptive reason, and that would definitely be the perception of our markets as well as any other. And I think any commercial producer would know that, and anyone who wasn't would take advantage of it. So it's not a route that's been successfully applied anywhere yet. What does happen in Australia is they recycle it to major water bodies as a small proportion of a very larger catchment, and that's what's also been looked at Auckland for resiliency in the future. But again, that's a discussion, and they believe that discussion will go on for a decade or two before something gets made. We need to move people. Scientifically, it's there. The water is, it's so clean, it's distilled water essentially, with certain treatment processes, but perceptive reasons make it untenable for commercial.
I do raise it because we are talking in terms of return to land, but we more commonly are returning to the ocean. You go out there, you catch a fish, take it home and fry it up, and don't seem to have any relative perception of what's going on there, yet the pipe finishes not too far from where your boat's anchored. Whether or not there's some community education or some community way of interacting to help the community come to terms with the relationship with the water that it's creating. Because it does seem to me to be at odds that it's right to put it in water, it's right to eat seafood. But when you put it under potatoes, suddenly those potatoes are a bit different.
It's a discussion point for the communities, you're correct.
Cities, major cities around the world, are using recycled water that come through their taps?
Singapore is often most commonly referenced, and anyone can fly it, but there's pretty obvious reasons why, and it's geopolitical. They're the footprint of Greater Auckland, Singapore. They sit abutted against Malaysia. They don't actually have a water source. They could easily have their major water source cut off by their neighbours. So when you look at why they've done it, it actually isn't because the numbers stack up or they've just had no choice, but they've also got a different form of governance that allows that, less representative one, if you like. it's often painted as that
Yeah,
no one looks back at how it happened because you've got an engineer in charge. And, yeah.
Much futuristic city.
But in scientific perspective, great water,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, it's all perception.
Amazing, yeah.
Crazy, yeah.
I picked up also in your report back, you mentioned about the presence of heavy metals. Is that after the treated effluent, so it's still containing that metal? So what kind of impact are those having on environment?
We have got, as a part of this whole process, this testing within out in the ocean, method survey which is coming up, getting done to test those issues, and if they are having. Those levels might not be high, but it's just noting that they could be present in there and have an impact, and that's why we're doing these environmental studies to actually just gauge that we're not having a negative impact in order to judge the impact that we're having. So it's a part
I think
of
it's encouraging that we're aware of it, we're monitoring for that, we have a strategy to determine what that material is and how it might impact, and given that those results are that it's very minor. I think it's important for the community because when it is there, but we're keeping a sharp eye out. We are well below permissible levels or whatever.
And if those contaminants are making it inconsistent, it's a reflection that not all the community are playing ball, because it means someone's dipping something in there that shouldn't be there. So that's very clearly controlled at the source. So parties who have a lot of those pollutants are usually controlled industries, but that doesn't stop people pouring their transmission oil or their paint thinner or everything else, and they do down typical drain pipes. That all ends up through our system. So when you measure for anything, you find it. In anything, you find it. So that's how it's so an effective marker for community well-being and drug use and other things like that. Because you can find, so you go looking for something, you find it in wastewater. Maybe not radioactive, but most other.
I tried to raise that too, but my point earlier on about if you run on the wire, if people are considering their waterways as having runner and knowing that it might help control their attitude and respect for those waterways, and on a personal level, the steps you can take yourself, not to put or be making a contribution to that. And on the other side, council is monitoring and keeping an eye out for that as well. And that we all have a responsibility to ensure that we keep a little eye out that, somebody down the road isn't doing something, and we all pay a due respect.
Any other questions on disposal? Yeah, this paper's almost a duplicate of what we had last year. So,
Well, I've got to catch up on the mortuary one.
yes, so, the mortuary one, yep.
So just that, we were in the last committee meeting, they had questions around how that separation of mortuary and wastewater is going to be dealt with. And I'm a bit of trouble because we have so many treatment plants, thinking through how we collect that, isolate that, and what we then do with it. One of the thoughts. I see a Wisconsin mound thingy. I just quickly googled it.
Canadian Indian.
Right.
And it's worked really well. And which is offset of this committee, they've been investigating the Wisconsin mound, and it was going to be originally at Tarahiru, but since all the water issues have been out there and the water levels have risen so much, it's been reconsidered as maybe not the right location for it. So this committee has gone through a lot of processes and agreeing on where it should go and how it goes from the hospital from the funeral directors to this particular site. So, do you want to do an update on that?
Separation and collection,
Yeah.
all the bylaws are in place.
Yeah, everything's all in place.
Oh,
Council got nowhere for it to go to.
Where do we take it from there?
You need to ask council.
Any suggestions, I suppose?
It was a case of the Kiwi Group actually, there were two proposals. You say it's even changed since then, but what I was updated on was two proposed sites that in regards to where it could go, and it was getting a sign off on that. The project's all ready to go. There's all the table levels, but the Wisconsin Mount is designed to be above ground, so it's treating this whole concept doesn't sit at ground level. So it's actually just waiting on sign off, which is actually getting the Kiwi Group back together following this meeting to confirm the site, and so it's then treated on site through Wisconsin Mount.
There are cultural places, spiritual places in our landscape that might be of some use. There's a maunga up far end of the Waimata called Motu Kio, and it's thought to be the spiritual landing place when a person passes away. The spirit drifts up into that maunga, and from that maunga departs to wherever the spirit is depart to. There are places associated with the passing of taonga, and maybe some of those types of places might be useful in the thinking of where such a mound or might go in terms of cultural relationship. They're not everywhere, but they do have whakapapa or connection back to the way the tipuna dealt with those sorts of things. And I raise it because I understand that this particular property is up for sale. So I don't want to be pushing the price up for that, but there are locales, cultural locales for spiritual
Certainly.
Is there any indication when the Kiwi Group will come back with their outcome?
We haven't met about the same time, I think.
Yeah.
This one,
That's changed, it's changed a bit on that too.
going out to those members and from what I understand from some of them, they were still getting it back together, I think, and confirming that and looking at those options.
Right. Still long work in progress. Still.
Mr Chair, through you and back to you, Mr Kelso. On page 18, forgive me, I'm novice to the Wastewater Management. Wisconsin Mound on page 18 under Wastewater Management, the Kiwi Group. Can you tell me something more about that? For the new terms for me.
About
Explain what the Wisconsin Mound is and who is
okay, so Wisconsin Mound, as I learn in this world, is a raised bed or as a platform, and with septic tanks, you've got the triple beds are normally set within a flat zone, and they sit within the raised Wisconsin Mound, so it's treated within a raised bed for processing that. So it's about getting it up out of the water table, so it's not impacted by water flow. It's just a better way of treating it. And the Kiwi Group, looking back through the history, was originally created and then
Natural way of treating it. There's no flavour when you just...
no, it's just it's just through working through the so returning it back to the whenua really, in a very safe way, which kept it away from going into any waterways or so, which was, as I understand the critical was to keep it on the land. So that was the focus on that.
Thank you very much. It's quite exciting. It sounds like it's a low-cost option.
A lot of housing development using them now. They've had new built at Muriwai, they've all got
Okay.
ones behind.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
For that purpose.
Just a different household and sewage things, so they sit on, maybe you say they sit on the top, and it's more around overflow. Scientists don't need it.
Another one, page 32, on 17, we talk about 22. On point 17, about the potential uses of this treated wastewater, its potential use to reduce salt intrusion to aquifers as sea level, go to sea level rise. How is that putting it into the aquifer? What is the relationship between the treated wastewater and an aquifer?
Well,
In terms of that?
You can,
so aquifers, like I know we have in Hawke's Bay, and we probably here too. There's a natural desire for salt water to move into fresh water already. So in that way, salt water can walk uphill, if you like. It can go move against the membrane. But the discussion about recharging aquifers wouldn't necessarily be about treated water. It would be simply about making the piezometric pressure in the aquifer higher than the one in the sea. As soon as they're close, water will find a way. So what you want with an aquifer, it'll have outlets on the land, which are springs, and it'll have outlets in the sea, like freshwater bubbles, which exist off the coast, and divers will know where they are. And they can go down and have a drink and show their mates, and everyone's happy. However, when they the fact that there's pressure there is a great thing. If that pressure was ever to go, salt water would waste no time in destroying those aquifers, and you wouldn't get it back. So, for examples, go to the early colonisation of Australia and to agriculture, where they decimated a lot of their aquifers by dragging water out of very slow filling large aquifers. Once the salts come in, you're not going to beat it. So it should be a real concern. You keep an eye on the pressure of your aquifers, and then water by any means will need to go in there to offset what the sea would potentially bring in, and you never get your aquifer back if you lose it. So that's the lesson there. Yeah.
Is that another point for research and discussion? Because it does seem like a positive role that treated effluent can then make a contribution back to preserving our soils, include supporting our food production industry by ensuring that the salt levels as the sea rises are kept somewhat in check, and that by returning it to that soil, it actually is doing the job to do, as opposed to just our disposal of it somewhere. And it actually has a function and is giving back a return to support its community and the lands that are so important in terms of industry and food production.
The solution there could be water from any source, not necessarily one, but that would be another potential use of recycled water.
And that might offset some of the thoughts of end users about their potatoes growing in, as a result of treated effluent. In fact, that effluent is what's preserving the soil that produces a very fine product. But now they've got a different context in order to have a relationship with the food that they eat.
Yeah,
because they're actually contributing to the care of the soil. Right.
That would be no different to recharging a reservoir with a small amount of recycled water and its natural catchment, as it is, which is the model used in other places. And then they'll take that water out and totally retreat it again before giving it to the customers.
We've had a recharge program with our Karakia water coming from Waipawa. That was about 4 years ago, maybe, and that was successful. The trial was, so that whole design thing has been done, and it was, I can't remember the actual price, but it was $700,000 around something around that to do the whole program. It was really quite exciting at the time, because at the time we had been drought droughts and a lot of water need. And the aquifer was declining rapidly. So that's the Karakia aquifer. The other aquifer, the Te Hapa aquifer, which is closer to the ocean, I think that already has saltwater intrusion coming in, if I remember rightly, from all the readings that we've done back in the day. The whole aquifer program here has been documented and it's there for working, you know.
Well, it's good to have those examples that have been tried and tested and working, and you're just simply building on that with water from here.
The wells are still there, I believe. Everything's all still there where they the water infiltration and everything. And they've monitored the rise, how much rise in the toxicity, and there's big documentation on that. Any other questions on alternative use and disposal update report?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take us to point 18 on page 22. So it stipulates here that a budget of 725k for investigation over the 2021 to the 2031 LTP. My interest for raising this is in terms of waste management. In other conversations as a council over the last 12 months, I'm aware that there's issues for wastewater management and water supply for Kaiti. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about over this way, but I just wonder if any of that in the thinking as the future development strategy will push us to putting more intensification into the Kaiti space. What will that then mean for waste management planning at this space in relation to water reservoir for that space? And given that, I forget the right name, so, you know, if we had an earthquake level 9 or a tsunami here, we would be left with just 2 islands, and so the water supply for that side would be an issue because the reservoir there and its ability to take care of the next 30 years. Placing this overall thinking is that there will only be Mangapapa and Kaiti, and I'm wondering if in rationalisation for a 30-year infrastructure strategy plan, a future development strategy and a Tairāwhiti resource management plan, whether or not we're actually thinking about wastewater management and water reservoirs for Kaiti, because our concentration seems to be in the urban space here in this wastewater treatment plant and future intensification out that way. And I'm wondering, is 725k, could there be a little space that something somewhere could be dedicated to considering that? I don't know the answer, I'm putting the question.
It's a slightly different topic because the alternative use and disposal is purely for the alternative use of the extra water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant. So that whole study is done on where this water can be used and how it can be used, can it be stored, so all these different scenarios, and that funding is specific to that activity.
To you again.
Just replying, I think you're right with everything you've said, and that belongs in the big room. It's not one of our tasks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And you should go hard in the big room and do all of those things, and in this small room, you'll be the recipient of everything that you will bring upon. With that 725, I've got a feeling it's been allocated to the wrong area. I always believed it was something to do with the sewage system. Work on that in the LTP to tidy it up, because it's a faulty system and it's just bleeding straight into our Waipawa River.
Would you like to comment on that?
Oh, through the chair, just in response to that, so we've done some modelling around with numbers and different pumps and schemes and stuff that all relate to our future development strategy. So, and we put that forward for infrastructure funding. So we've got that information, and and essentially it's right that if we end up going down that track that you need another BTF or whatever else, then once the decision and there's some funding locked away, consent conditions you'd have to work through, and the committee would then monitor whatever that output that's agreed with tangata whenua would come into here. So the big picture infrastructure stuff, as you're saying, would sit in terms of long-term planning infrastructure needs of the park. So,
Thank you.
All right, I think we've done that. It's just a noting report. Move it all. Moved by Peter Brown. All those in favour? Okay, we've got the last report, and that's page 58, Drainwise Program Update. Very important program, and obviously being hindered by weather events for the year. Page 58. Leo, on again.
So again, just noting this 1st of July to 30th of June 23, so 1st of July 22 to 23. Yes, quite a major eventful period for council. When we're looking at, we had 5 wet river overflow events, and as you can see by the little table I've put in there, the names speak for themselves in terms of the intensity of them. So pretty much, we had one in August 22, another one in September 22. Hail then came along in January, followed by Gabriel, and another one in July 23, which was also impacted by the outfall pipeline break, which kind of meant the wet weather overflow came a bit sooner than normal, but it was quite a substantial event. Directly linked to major rain, what I can see in history. The owls speak for themselves with regard to the cyclone, and really the July one was following just consistent rain events right through to that point, so it was saturated, which compounded that. Rapid inflow assessment on private properties for that 12 months, 2,100 houses were inspected, 1,083 gully traps were repaired, and 35 downpipes were removed from gully traps. So that's just a direct feed into the wastewater system. And from what I've learnt from the team, removing one downpipe is equivalent to close to 50 properties' normal wastewater flow. So dry weather flows. So taking out 35 is major. It's quite a massive direct flow, and obviously repairing those gully traps. And the program that they have been running, or we've been running for that period, has been great because the person doing the inspection does the repairs. So we know that they've been done with absolute confidence, and there's checks and balances around that as well, which is maybe a bit of a change to history in that regard. So really high level of confidence in the performance of what we've achieved there, and that's actually illustrated in the increase in the performance of the network during weather events as well, by getting those gully traps fixed and those downpipes out. Public drains on private property, which is all around looking at localised flooding that affects several properties, so where water's pooling and topping gully traps, so direct flows in. We've got quite an intensive program of looking at where those are and how we mitigate those. Obviously it's a bit of a process working through getting permission from private landowners. For this particular period, 3% of the budget was spent because quite a major project was carried forward into the next year, so financial year. So we carried the budget forward, doesn't disappear, goes with the projects. I will in future ones produce a report around how many public drains on private property projects the teams have done. It's quite substantial. I think we're sitting at 33. Also had all these things that are run from the network, and I'll give some scale around the projects that will be investigated going forward to improve the network from a storm.
Drains, are they all closed?
So it's really just, if around your house you've got flooding and some houses a couple of 100 mil high or higher, and it's affecting multiple houses, what we will do is put in a drain system that gets it into the stormwater network, so removing it from that property, so we don't get that problem. Yeah, there are some open drains if there's property that enable that, or it's manholes going into feeding into the network. But essentially, it's just getting that water off the land and giving it a pathway out through the system. And there's, we're in Gisborne, so there's a lot of pending projects around that. But I must sort of say, the work the team has done in Kaiti, those 33 projects are pretty much all in there. So they've done pretty much covered off most of the pooling around Kaiti, where it's possible to. The report then goes on to the dry weather, wet weather consent, talking to what would have been discussed before, that setting up a tangata whenua reference group, so moved on from the Kiwa group. The operating maintenance plan is in play, which is around jetting ways, wastewater systems, making sure that the network is operating efficiently. And there was a response plan previously, a shellfish virus study, which would have been discussed at a previous meeting. Stormwater and wastewater renewals. The stormwater renewal spend was 64% of budget in that year, because it related to one quite major project, Graham Delator Road, and that project has been carried over into this financial year. So it is being worked through at the moment. And the 22-23 wastewater network renewal program was also delayed because of Cyclone Hale and Gabriel. So we're just in the process next week of completing that one, and then move straight into the 23-24 plan and have that done before the end of this financial year. So still keeping track. It's just these storm events have pushed them out. And we've renewed just under 5,000 metres of pipe to date, mainly focusing on the large wastewater network pipes at the moment. For the biggest effect, because it affects the most people. There's laterals which will come further down the line, it's one property or two properties, so we're really focusing on the network. And again, we'll have a program to illustrate where we're at and what the program movements will be through to over the next 7 to 10 years as well, so everyone's got a clear line of sight on what we're doing. And the report then just discusses background around the reason for rainwise and the reports. Essentially, it's a summary of what I've just talked about in regards to the performance of property inspections, public lands on private property, and stormwater and wastewater. So that's the report, short and succinct.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've got a question. If there was more funding for Unwise, would the completion rate be better? Or other issues that
I have put in for, we're just looking at that budget, and this is an operational budget when you this is operational and capital. Obviously the property inspections are operational, so that's just going around and inspecting. We have got a highly efficient person at the moment, and I think on the projection of the plan that we're doing now will actually get us through a full round of inspections and confidence around that. We're sticking with our program. I don't think budget, unless you've got the right people, will solve that one. Yeah.
I think it's working well. Just give it time.
The right people, right place. I think the program that's in place for public drains on private property and the renewals will deliver within the capacity of the network of the providers to actually get it through, because it's got to be done if we're looking at renewals at certain times of the year too. Spring, summer, they better affect the flow of flows. So it's a timing thing. So I think the program that's in place is sound. We're just got to keep on top of it and show to the committee how we're tracking against getting that ultimate endpoint.
I noticed there wasn't any smoke testing done. Is that a reason?
So we've actioned that, kind of started after this report, so we've actioned that again just to give a broader scope. The team have actually just completed going around all of the schools and using the smoke testing on that, which has delivered quite a concise report that's been sent to the ministry around getting them to repair their stuff. But it was very eye-opening in regards to the impact they're having on our network as well. Yeah.
I've seen smoke testing in action. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you run a network as well?
Yes, we do, and we will start doing that to cover great areas. What it mostly does highlight is the issues with private laterals, etc. too. So a critical part that we're working through will be a program around how that's approached, because that's a much harder pathway that we're going to walk in regards to costs and how do we do it.
Couldn't help but chuckle at the image of small kids smoking in the toilets and explaining themselves to the headmaster that they're actually testing the wastewater system in the school.
Part of it actually, you have to notify the fire brigade that you're doing it, and there have been people that have run fire brigade. There's quite bad issues. The buildings have filled up, and it's not actual smoke; it's like a vapour, which kids are used to these days. Yeah, it's worked well in this initial trial for us and the new team. So how we utilise it.
Usually in, because I saw it in action. I thought, that's the perfect way of testing pipes without having to roll down cameras and stuff like that. Any questions on DrainWise, on the DrainWise program?
I'd like to make a point on page 64, bullet point 21, talks about current and future function. I feel like we should acknowledge the participation of the tangata whenua in that as well, and how that might be adversely impacted on, but also the whole of it, our community. And certainly the comments I've received back from community, because they're all very concerned about every time it hits, every rain, and they gives an announcement that the pipes have been opened again. So it is impactful adversely on the whole community. I particularly raised tangata whenua because I noticed through all the reports there are various tangata whenua commitments at 4 stages. There's a lot of tangata whenua membership on the Wastewater Management Committee yesterday. There's a tangata whenua reference group for DrainWise. There's a Kiwa group named after a swimming pool legend. That's part of the alternative use and disposal. They were they got the name the pool. But the and my concern is that we had a discussion earlier on in this room with council over consultation fatigue, and we'd like to hope we can acknowledge the input that tangata whenua are having and seem to have on all these things, and how much pressure that puts back on you, and because they are present in these, how impactful any adverse outcomes are back on our people that way. So not really a question, more just a comment. And I'm concerned that whether or not we are overtaxing that involvement and how robust we can be in supporting and coming back to that. And that's in line with this discussion we had earlier on consultation fatigue, that council puts pressure on its community too often and for too much. It feels a little bit that way here.
So, to follow up on Councillor remarks, I think looking forward, I think part of our work program is that we focus our consultation and we maybe withdraw back from those two groups. He was sort of started here and maybe has drifted somewhat as an end result that we need to tidy up. So that's one focus we can work on, but it may not necessarily mean all the same parts to help us with the other objective. And then there was the construction of another group where I think it was, we had less hands-on in this table around a wider group. And for example, consultation for what Drainwise is doing, and should we help tangata whenua have a direct involvement in that is the question, rather than just have these groups and expect them to do something. But getting back to our work plan, sorry to keep going over everyone's work, but I'm looking at on page 23 and under risks, and risk item number 26. I think there's been two months ago, that one there is one that we should live every meeting we have. And what does this non-compliance mean? Excellent, all that work we've done with the down at the plant. It was done to mitigate the delay of being compliant. I think we just need to keep ourselves up to date. Have we passed? Are we compliant? If we're not, one of the small parts we've still got to work on.
Yeah, although previous reports did have compliance updates on them as well, so.
I think it's enough, but we are compliant, so the UV is running, the solids removal is running, so that that plant is delivering. But I can report to that more succinctly in future meetings as well.
Just trying to remember, the current consent is up for renewal, isn't it?
Consent being out.
Yeah.
No, I think it's 2038.
Oh.
That one.
Oh, you know, there are some little targets.
Yeah.
Some of those are annoying. I can't understand the science for what they mean out in the end of the pipe and stuff like that. Those ones that are always shifting.
Yeah. And they're in the wet weather and dry weather overflow consents. The we'll be working towards those and making sure we meet those.
Yeah. One that's due 20.
So it's 7 years left. 2030, I think.
Right.
The alternate use one is because we genuinely have to work with tangata whenua to show them that we are looking at the alternate uses.
Yep. Try and get water out of the outfall totally. That's the ultimate goal.
And the beauty of the irrigation work that has been done, it was also asked by other groups, Chamber of Commerce, so it wasn't just tangata whenua saying, oh yeah, you can spray all those lettuces and you're okay. And that's why I think we've still got to stick to some of the, and just hope that over time people get used to the concept and we find another dukes who are keen to experiment with something.
Yeah. Ian is not involved with the Kiwi group anymore, is he? Or?
That's why we would like to look at the makeup of Kiwa.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
don't think
right.
Ray is, Ray Farmer. I speak to him regularly. I don't think he is involved, but I think he's probably out. But yeah, have we got an update on that, Nadine, at all?
Sorry, what was that?
The Kiwi group. The Kiwi group at present, is it still its original makeup?
No. And Jean had to jump off earlier, but he's been engaging in that space with the members that have some of the members. So there's a mix in there. But yeah, I can't give you all the specific names at this. We've got a meeting scheduled, is it next week or week after? And so maybe we can bring information back.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. All right.
I'll just repeat that this group has some core jobs it has to do. Kiwa group, are they able to deliver one of those jobs or not?
Yeah.
So just because there's a Kiwa group doesn't mean it has a right to exist, is what I'm saying.
All right, yeah.
We might feel
It's
strong enough for you.
got a role that we need to,
We might ask you to close them down.
okay, because its role at the moment was the Wisconsin Mound, the mortuary.
No, a number of alternate uses, of which that was just one.
Yeah.
Karakia was another one.
And Karakia, yeah.
And the Māori compass was a tool that the council, I think, adopted.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, do I have a mover on this report at all? Yep. Councillor Tibble and Angus, thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Tibble, second by Angus. All those in favour? Aye. Okay, well, that's the end of the meeting. There's no other issues that anyone wants to raise at all?
Yes, so we've got a meeting next week. Yep.
Two of them. We haven't met all year and now it's a feast. A feast of Wastewater.
I'm just wondering what
What is the agenda?
The agenda will be out on Friday. There's papers on it.
but no decision reports, just for info.
No, just again, information reports that will update on the period to date. Be early November. So just giving a status update on where we're at, really to bring it up to speed, and then from that point we can be more formalised in what we're doing and decide around, you know, what alternative use reports you want or studies you want, etc.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, could I request probably from Tim, so we had an annual plan, so maybe you can put your mind to that for next year, we're looking at.
For the meetings, or?
Well, your meetings and what's required in terms of our commitments for this committee as aligned to the consent itself.
Given that next meeting would probably be the last for the year for this committee, Council gives some consideration to acknowledging the committee and particularly its relationship with tangata whenua and the tangata whenua presence in this house in that final meeting. It just gives some thought on what that might look like, and I hope that it helps build future and further relationships and collaborations with our tangata whenua.
Here for since 2008. Well, I've been involved in this committee since 2013, I know that. So I was a champion of our relationship. It's been a great success.
Support and encourage that right across council's committees.
Yeah. Privileged to be on.
Just my concern, Mr. Chair, was how the reasons we were sort of asked to come back as tangata whenua rather than the iwi reps. Yeah, I don't know. I know that there may be some iwi that have a different lens on this space rather than what's happening now.
I'm not quite sure how that process went, but the dean would not, I should imagine.
Close the meeting.
Or do you want to close the meeting?
I'll hereby close this meeting then. Have a discussion.
Yeah, so just